Guys, Mr. Tapley here, and I'm just making the first video lecture for Term 2, Year 9 Humanities, going over what we'll be doing in today's double period, looking at World War I history. So as I mentioned in the previous video, I'll be uploading these little lecture style videos, just so you guys have something to, I guess, narrate the slides that I'm uploading, so it doesn't feel like you guys are going through the PowerPoint, going through the textbook by yourself. I'll be here to kind of explain class instructions, explain difficult topics, and yeah, I'll see how that goes. I'll be uploading the videos to the Compass lesson plan, and I'll be putting a little YouTube link in there, so you can just click on the link and that'll take you to the video. I'll try and throw them up onto Google Classroom as well, into Compass Resources. Yeah, but it's going to be a challenge to figure all this stuff out. Not going to be perfect. First try I make it. And if you guys have any feedback, any comments, criticisms, questions, improvements, advice, throw it my way, and I'll see what I can do to make some changes. I already had a really good suggestion. Someone wanted to set this up as like a YouTube live stream. That way, when I'm going through the slides, you guys can get in chat and be like, "Oh, slow down, mate. Your accent sounds funny." Or, "Oh, actually, I have a question about that. Can you go back?" So I'll see what I can do about that. But yeah, for now, I'll just be uploading these little videos to help you guys out. And yeah, just without further ado, let's get into the first lesson. So Wednesday, April 15th, we've got a double period today for both my Year 9 classes, 9B1 and 9G3. Hello. So this is the lesson plan for the full double period. You probably find with Humanities, with all of your subjects really, that we're going to be trying to set less work than we would than if we were at school for 50 minutes, because we understand it's a bit of a challenge doing this stuff online. So this is actually the lesson plan for the double. So this one video covers the full double of Humanities today on Wednesday, April 15th. And yeah, let's go through what we're doing today. So this is on Compass. This is for 9B1, but 9D3 looks exactly the same. I'm just going by who is based on the alphabet, so sorry guys. Learning attention. So what we are doing this lesson is developing our understanding of where World War I was fought. So we looked at why it was fought, now we're looking at where it was fought. The combatants involved, so that refers to who was involved, the countries involved, and the casualties suffered. So how many people were injured, how many people died. Pardon me. The success criteria is locating the World War I Eastern and Western fronts, listing the nations involved in each battlefront, and investigating several key battles. Lesson activities. So what I'd recommend to you guys is wake up, log into Compass, read through this. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Lesson activities. Okay, I'm going to open up the class slides, which are available in Google Classroom Resources. Looks something like that. And then I'd look at this video explaining those slides, so you can kind of go along with Mr. Tapley as I go through the slides. The set lesson activities are going to be completed in your digital notebook, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And you'll need access to Chapter 8.4 of your textbook. If you guys remember from last year, because we've already started World War I. Last term, if you guys remember from last term, in Term 1 History, you'll see I've got World War I, little folder, and then Chapter 8. That's what we're looking at. So today is going to be 8.4, but Chapter 8's there as a PDF, and I've also put it into a Google Classroom folder. So 9B1 Humanities will look the same as 9G3, but basically, if you go to Classwork, Class Drive folder, you can see in the resource section, I've got the class PowerPoint there, PowerPoint link there. If I click on Class Drive folder, it'll take you to the PowerPoint again. And I'm also going to, by the time this video is finished uploading, I'll throw the textbook chapter up there just as a PDF, so you got options to access it both ways. Yeah, so without further ado, I think we will get into the class slides. If the internet at Glen Waverley stops being absolute garbage. Anyway. So some of this will look familiar to you guys. I might start at the tippy top. Some of it's seen a bit of a revamp over the holidays. We're not going to be going through all of this because we've already gone through most of it. So World War I, that's the first slide you'll see. You'll see I've given you a little unit outline. That's a timeline. You guys have seen this before. We went over the causes of the war, the long-term causes, short-term. We went over the Balkan Wars. Apologies for buzzing through this quickly, but we have looked at it before. It's not the first time we've seen it. Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. World War I causes summary timeline. Conscription propaganda is where we left off in the last week of term 1. So I had you guys look at World War I conscription and propaganda, and you guys had the opportunity to make your own World War I propaganda posters after analyzing some of these examples from World War I, these primary sources. So that's where we left off. This is where we are starting today, the battlefronts of World War I. You'll see throughout the PowerPoint, the slides, that I'll have little clear indicators, lesson plan. This is where we're starting off, and then at the end of it, we usually say lesson activities, just so you guys don't accidentally complete a month's worth of content in one lesson. I've already had some people asking me, like, oh, what are we doing, in this slide? I'm like, that's weeks away. Leave that alone, all right? So just focus on one lesson at a time. Anyway, that's the learning intention success criteria. We've already read through that. Can move one little face. There we are. Cool. So the world at war events of World War I. The Allies and the Central Powers fought along two main battlefronts in World War I, the Eastern Front and the Western Front. Well, I do have a compass that's useful. Never eat soggy Weet-Bix. So East is over here, West is over here. The Central Powers understood it would be difficult to win a war fighting enemies on both sides, so to avoid fighting France and Russia simultaneously, Germany developed the Schlieffen Plan, which is a fun word to say. So this photo I've actually stolen from the textbook, but it's really good, guys, because you can see, based on those different colors, where the Eastern Front is, so that purple there, the Western Front, so the orange there, it's a bit harder to see. You've got the different people involved as well, so the Allies, the Triple Entente, and then the Central Powers over here. So Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire. So as you can see, Germany and his mate Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, they're in a bit of a bind. They're in the middle. So they've got enemies on the east and also on the west. So they've got a plan. They've got a plan to avoid fighting two wars at once. They've developed the Schlieffen Plan. So the plan was, while Russia was taking a long time to get its army ready, because they were being lazy about it, I was just there at a bigger country, it was harder to get people to come in to get to the Eastern Front. Anyway, while Russia was mobilizing its army, Germany would launch a rapid-fire assault on France. So they said, all right, we're not messing around. We're just going to get into France super quickly, wipe them out before the war has even started. After defeating France, the enemies to the west, Germany could focus all of its efforts on the Eastern Front of Russia. Sounds good in theory. Didn't work, which is why they ended up fighting on the Eastern and the Western Front. So the plan was unsuccessful. Why? The events of World War I, the Schlieffen Plan. The Germans believed assaulting France directly would be difficult, as the French-German border was heavily fortified. Lots of forts, lots of little turrets for people to shoot out of. So this, where is it? Again, I've stolen this from the textbook. So how the Schlieffen Plan was meant to work. Schlieffen. Line of French fortresses. That's too difficult. Can't go into France. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around Belgium. Can't go through it. I'm going to go around tiny itty-bitty Belgium to beat up France. The plan failed because the Belgian army was actually a bit stronger than they expected, and with the help of the French and the British, so Belgium's ally, that was the other reason why the Schlieffen Plan was a disaster, because the UK, Britain, were allies with Belgium, and that was kind of like, oh, you're beating up our ally? Now we'll get into the war. They probably would have gotten into the war eventually, but it got the UK, Britain, into the war much sooner than Germany expected, so they didn't realize that they were mates with them. Anyway, Belgian resistance was stronger, the Germans were denied victory, and they were halted in northern France. So instead of going in all over here and beating up Paris, they got stuck around there. So plan direction of attack, the plan failed. So that meant that Germany was fighting on the west and the east. So the Western Front was over here. It was between Germany, Belgium, France, all the way up and down the UK. The aftermath of the failed Schlieffen Plan was I realize I keep going Schleifen and Schlieffen, just pick either. I'm clearly not German. Was the establishment of the Western Front. So it was 440 miles of fortified trenches and barbed wire from Switzerland, down here, to the North Sea. 440 miles. Think about that. Get your little calculator out if you want. Do a little bit of a calculation of how many kilometers that is. 440 miles of trenches and barbed wires. Ridiculous. The Western Front was the main theatre for World War I. Trench warfare resulted in an indecisive stalemate for the first several years of the war. We might talk about trench warfare later, depending on how much time we have, but basically how, if you guys remember back to year 8 history, when you looked at like feudal Japan and feudal Europe, how wars were fought back then was basically, all right, I've got a lot of people over here, I've got a lot of people over here, smush. Didn't work that way with the invention of guns, with the invention of these digging tools. Basically how the war happened was they dug a bunch of holes, and then they kind of stuck their head out of the hole, and they went pew, 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 stuck the bed back down. And the way that trench warfare worked out was it was very difficult for anyone to win the war. It was basically two people trying not to lose the war. It was defensive. It'd be like if you're playing dodgeball in PE, and everyone's at the back of like the gym just kind of throwing balls at you because you don't want to get closer because you'll die. So as a result of trench warfare, we had this stalemate. No one was really winning for the first several years of the war. So on the Western Front, there would be months and no one would really do anything. There'd be a lot of dying, a lot of shooting, but no one would move forward or backwards. Everyone just stayed along the Western Front. You'd have hundreds of people die over inches of land. It was really tragic. So trench warfare results in the stalemate along the Western Front. There were some significant offensives, big battles between 1915 to 1917 that caused monumental losses of life, however, resulted in insignificant territorial gains. So literally just inches of land, hundreds and thousands of people died. Some of the major battles. So this is the first activity I'd like you guys to do during our double period. Some of the major battles in the Western Front, I'd like you guys to go into your digital notebook and record some information on the Battle of the M.A.I.N, Battle of Verdun, the Battle of the Somme, and the Battle of Passchendaele. Nice names. In your response, you need to take note of when and where the battle occurred. So what year, what month, what day. Just year and month is fine. Where the battle occurred, so where country, what city, where was it, and how many casualties were suffered. So you can see some of them on the map, actually. So you've got Passchendaele over there, Somme, M.A.I.N was one of the very, very early battles, and then Verdun. So I'd like you to use your textbook, do a bit of independent research if you'd like to, but the textbook should have some information on those 4 major battles, and you just write in your little digital notebook when it happened, where it happened, why it happened, so what was the purpose of these battles, and how many casualties were suffered. I should point out that there is a difference between casualties and fatalities. So fatalities is when someone's died. Casualties includes people who have been injured. So if you look up fatalities, you'll get the wrong numbers. So look up casualties. I mentioned that digital notebook a couple of times, and I might just give you a bit of insight. So as it's going to be difficult for me to check your writing, check that you're doing work every lesson, what I've made for each of the classes and each of the students is this little notebook. So this is 9B1, again 9G3, yours looks the same. I promise I'll focus on your class next lesson. If I go into this little digital notebook, it looks something like this. So Year 9 Humanities, all you guys need to do is stop the PowerPoint, open this up, type in your name and your ID, lesson date, type in the date, which will be the 15th of the 4th when you're doing this lesson, hopefully. And this is where you'll be writing out your questions. So the Battle of the M.A.I.N, I'm just going to go Battle of the M.A.I.N, and then blah, 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 blah. Q. And yeah, you've got a double period to work on this particular lesson, the slides that I'm looking at today. So do take your time with it. This is the Western Front. I did mention that there were 2 sides to the war, the West and the East. So once you've paused the video and gone through that, you can come back here and I'll tell you a little bit about the Eastern Front. There we go. So the Eastern Front was located approximately between Russia and Romania. So the Allies, you got Russia over here, Romania's there on one side, and Germany, Bulgaria, Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Hungary on this side. Now, the Eastern Front was a bit different from the Western Front just because of the land size. So Russia is absolutely massive. Russia is a huge country. It wouldn't be very practical for them to build little trenches, build little holes into the ground. So in Russia, in the Eastern Front, they had more traditional battles. We had lots of people kind of smashing into each other. The Russians experienced some early successes in the war. However, due to poor leadership and equipment. They just didn't have enough guns, didn't have enough boots, they didn't have enough training with those guns and those boots. The Germans soon gained the advantage. So the idea was that Germany wouldn't be able to win this war because they were fighting on two sides, but the Russians didn't do a very good job. Cheeky Russians. The Eastern Front didn't do very well. There was a collapse of the Russian military in 1917. Also, there was a revolution. So the Russian Empire used to be run by the Tsar, which is a fancy Russian word for king, emperor. There was a big revolution. A person you might have heard of named Vladimir Lenin brought communism to Russia. And that ended Russia's involvement in the war. Basically, the military was so bad, the emperor was doing so poorly, or the king, the Tsar, whatever you want to call him, that the Russian people were like, we need a new guy in charge. Let's go for this guy, this Vladimir Lenin guy. And they was like, all right, cool. Part of me being Vladimir Lenin is I'm in charge, communism, and we're going to end the war. So the Eastern Front's effectively gone after 1917. Russia's given up. They've gone home, packed up their bag, taken their ball, run off the pitch. So now the majority of the fighting is going to go to the Western Front. But although the majority of the fighting occurred on the East and the Western Front, the conflict reached across the globe. As it says in the title there, it was a world war. It was Germany's decision to build its navy, connecting to our main causes of militarism, prior to World War I that had convinced Britain to join the war. They saw Belgium get beat up, they were like, oi. And also Germany was building this big navy, which Britain was not all about, because that was the one thing Britain had going for it, was that they had a really good navy, and they're like, oh, we don't want this. So the British fleet prevented Germany from importing supplies and trapped the German navy in Germany. So they were stuck in their little boats, like, we can't get out there and do anything about it. Which was good for the Allies, but Germany was very clever. They invented these U-boats, which are basically submarines. I think this picture in the bottom right. Yep, that's a U-boat. So to get around that blockade in the Navy, the U-boats went underwater, submarines, and they were just wreaking havoc on Allied vessels. Unfortunately, one of those vessels, one of those ships that the Germans decided to blow up, was a U.S. trade ship. USA, Mr. Tabley. So they blew up some U.S. Trade ships that were, transporting goods and equipment over to Europe. U.S. got pissed off, and they said, all right, we're joining the war. So as soon as Russia kind of left the war, Germany were like, oh, we've got this in the bag, boys. America joined the war. And they're like, oh, that's poor timing. And it's going to have a big impact, obviously, on how the war ends. So although this was mostly happening on the east and the west, there was also a war at sea. You had this navy battle between these U-boats and the U.S. Ships and the German and the British ships. So there was a war at sea. We're not going to look at that in too much detail. We're focusing on the east and the west, but I just wanted you guys to know about that. It wasn't fought entirely on land. Now, Italy was initially allied with the Central Powers. However, when the war began, they remained neutral. So initially, Italy, before the war, they were like, we're your buddy, mate. And then the war started, and they were like, we left some stuff at home. I'm going to get out of here. In 1915, Italy signed a secret agreement with Britain and France to join the Allies, creating an Italian battlefront between Italy and Austria-Hungary. So Italy went full backstab. They initially signed up with the Central Powers of Germany and Austria, then they didn't do anything, and then they joined the other guys. They joined Britain and France. That was another thing that happened during the war, was this Italian battlefront, but we're not looking at that in much detail because it didn't last very long, because the Italians, much like the Russians, didn't do very well in the war. The beginnings of the Armenian genocide also originated in World War I. So the Ottoman Empire, which is now Turkey, once they started losing the war, they started killing off people who didn't really agree with them. They started killing off people who they thought, oh, if I don't kill them, they're going to pick up a gun and join the Allies. They're going to join Russia. They're going to join France. So they went to Armenia, and they committed some horrible, horrible, horrible atrocities. We have students, whose relatives, migrants, immigrated from Armenia, and they were, part of the Armenian genocide. Not much that we're going to be looking into, but it's just something I thought, was worth noticing that occurred, started off in World War I. The Gallipoli campaign, a very, very famous campaign in Australia, obviously, also occurred during 1915. The Allies ultimately failed to invade Turkey via the Gallipoli Peninsula and suffered heavy casualties. So this is where Australia was doing a lot of its fighting, was in Turkey, was in Gallipoli. The European colonies in Africa, China, the Middle East, and the Pacific Islands also saw fighting. Again, it's a world war because of, we think back to our main causes, imperialism. because of all these people going over and getting colonies like Australia. We saw fighting all around the world. We saw imperial powers making promises to foreign colonies of independence. So Germany would say to one of Britain's colonies, hey, we'll let you guys be free if you fight Britain. Or Britain would say, hey, you guys, we'll let you be free if you fight Germany. We saw rebellions across the globe. We saw some colonies, such as Australia, join World War I to fight for their empire, for their imperial masters, if you will, to fight across the globe. Now, that's a lot of information, which is why I'm giving you guys a full double period to work on this. Read through the slides. You can pause it, you can rewind it, you can take some notes if you want. That's what your notebooks are for. What I'd like you to have by the end of this lesson is information on these major battles on the Western Front. And then, so if you finish that maybe in the first lesson, that'll probably be a good way of structuring things. So 50 minutes to give you to finish up until here. Thumbs up. And then the second little activities that I'd like you to do, just some textbook questions. So chapter 8.4 looks at these battles in World War I, the events of World War I, and I'd like you to look at questions 4 to 6 in exercise 1, and questions 1 through 4 in exercise 2. And I'll just show you what those questions look like. Or I'll try to. Zoom in. There we are. So, we want questions 4 to 6 for exercise 1, which is right here. So question 4 is, why was Germany able to achieve victories on the Eastern Front? That was over in Russia. So think about what the slides say, think about what the textbook says. Question 5, explain the effect of Britain's naval blockade on Germany's ability to import war materials and to defend its colonies. A lot of information. That's relating to what I said about Germany, its navy getting trapped in German waters. And they had to invent these U-boats, these submarines. If you read more about that in chapter 8.4, you find the answer to that question there. Question 6. What were the effects of Germany's retaliation against the blockade? That's where America comes in. US of A, Mr. Tapley. Exercise 2 for 8.4, you're looking at questions 1, 3, and 4. Question 1, 1ABC. In one paragraph, explain why Germany needed to defeat France quickly, how the Schlieffen Plan was meant to achieve this, and why the attack on France had to be made through neutral Belgium. So it looks like 1, 2, 3 questions there. That's just one little paragraph. You could do one sentence for A, one for B, one for C. So a little 3-sentence mini paragraph just explaining why Germany was trying to beat up France so quickly, what the Schlieffen Plan, I keep going for Schlieffen or Schleifen, anyway, why that plan was meant to achieve this, and why the attack on France had to be made through Belgium. Question 3, yes. Question 3, identify the locations of the Western Front, the Eastern Front, and then other places in Europe where they fought. So I mentioned other countries, which I won't repeat again, and the Middle East. And then question 4, last question, 3 developments that could be regarded as turning points in the war during 1914 and 1915. 3 developments that could be 3 battles that happened during those years that have had a big impact on the war. That could be different countries joining the war. That could be a lot of things, really. So that's what you're looking for on that question 4 there. And yeah, that's all I've got to say. So that'll be your full double period for Wednesday. Try and smash those activities out in one day. But if you can't get them done, we don't have class tomorrow, you can do a little bit extra. It's your classwork turns into homework. I've mentioned that before. And yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me. I'll be at my desk. I'll be at my laptop tomorrow when we have classes for the Year 9. So I'll be ready and waiting for anyone to send me any emails, any questions. And what I'll do before next lesson's video is if there were a lot of questions that were the same, I will answer those questions in the next video as well. So you don't just have to read through a poorly constructed email. And yeah. Best of luck, guys. Trying to think of anything I've forgotten. Probably forgotten a lot, but I'm sure you'll tell me that in the questions. So yeah, talk to you later, guys. Cheers.